Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jim Lanny, and I'm the CEO of Intellectus 360. And we have lots of tools, and this webinar will be covering quantitative and qualitative methodology. On the call is Ashley, Samantha, and Melissa here to answer your questions and to kind of triage any student questions or faculty questions. Samantha for the students and Ashley for the faculty. And as I just was mentioning, a few questions have come through, so maybe I'll get started, and then I'll stop and take some questions. Okay. So, and do we need to know? I'm also curious, are you student or faculty, and where are you in the process? That's going to help me understand kind of where maybe help me curate this presentation a little bit. Um, if you're in a dissertation or in a methodology or whatever, just throw that on in there. Okay, so let's get it started here. Uh, okay, so first I'm going to start with quantitative methodology. They're both easy, but we'll start with this one. So I like to think of methodologies, both quant and qual, really, as kind of a cookbook. And basically, you want the ingredients to figure out how to replicate your study, not how to cook the data, how to replicate your study. So, because good science is in replication. And in fact, there was a replication crisis because some of the, you know, I'll say seminal work or studies was supposedly, the word of God. It was like, okay, Ash's study, these things were, all of these things were able to be replicated. And it turned out they couldn't be replicated. So good science is not only doing a good study, which means presenting a good methodology, but then also being able to have others replicate it. So, and in that replication or in that recipe kind of analogy, you want enough information to redo the study, but you don't need so much information that it's irrelevant. If you're using, bananas in your, banana cream pie, okay, you don't need to know how the bananas were grown, okay? You need to know what the ingredients are, how they're chopped, how long they're cooked for, and so forth. But you don't need all these other details. And not always, but enough times I see too much information or literature review in there or things of that sort, which is not really relevant to conducting the study. The lit review is there to identify a gap and to justify the study, but it's not there to actually to make the recipe or to repeat your study. So that's kind of the overarching kind of mindset you should have when you go into quantitative or qualitative methodologies. Okay. So first we need research questions. I don't what do I want to say about that? I was going to say I don't know why people are struggling with it. I think people try to make it too complicated. Um, just, keep it simple. There's variables and there's some relationship among these variables. That's it. Emotional intelligence, gender, is there differences on emotional intelligence by gender? So don't get, some people are like, I've been working on it for months. Stop that. Just figure out the constructs of the variables and then how they relate to each other. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So get questions. By the way, if you don't have the best questions in the world, that's okay. Get something down on paper, and then you and your advisor can kind of tweak that. Okay, so don't feel like they have to be perfect. We'll talk about questions, but just do the best you can there, and don't fret too long. Participants is the next part. This is the again core ingredients to a study. Participants or observations, where did you get them from? Are they anonymous or confidential in the process? How were they recruited and so forth? Okay, materials and instruments. Used to be just instruments, but materials is there too. So materials is things like a consent form. You have to ask for consent of people to participate in your study. You have to tell them that they can leave your study without any penalty, particularly if you're an instructor or faculty looking to get students. They need to know my grade is not influenced by my participation here. If they feel uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form, they can withdraw from the study and so forth. Instruments are really any kind of survey instrument. And it could be things you make up, although I'm going to strongly dissuade you from that. Let's take a note here. So you want validated instruments for many reasons, but the primary reason is that if you're measuring emotional intelligence, you say, well, I have my own questions I could ask. You can do that, but a committee member or the IRB, Institutional Review Board, can say, hey, Donna, great set of questions. How do you know that that's reliable? How do you know that that scale is valid? And if you make up your own questions very, very often, you wind up into scale development or, okay, construct development rather than using, okay, that scale to examine the research question at hand. So use reliable and validated instruments for those students who tell me, and I've heard this, who tell me, Jim, there is no instrument that's measuring my construct. And I say to you this, out of the whole world, out of the whole planet Earth, no one has developed an instrument of what you're studying. And for your dissertation, you're going to now develop this? There's something wrong with that, okay? It's also like people saying there's no literature, okay, on my topic. That might well be, but as an advisor, I'm going to tell you to switch your topic to something where there is literature, to something where there is a validated instrument. So it just doesn't make sense to me that you're going to be doing that hard work of developing instruments, okay, and actually using the instruments. Okay. Um, procedure. Procedure is simply how do you go from administering those instruments, including consent, how do you administer that to those people? What is said? What is given? How much time is there? So I've got these emails. I've sent out a consent form or put it in a survey. They fill it out. If there's a pre-post test, I have some unique identifier. Okay, whatever. Their first dog and their mother's birth date. Okay, that's unique enough. Can't track it back, so it's still anonymous. Okay, what is that whole procedure? I met a famous researcher at breakfast one time when I was at Miami, and I won't go into the whole study, but let me just tell you that part of what he did not put in his methodology is him explaining to the participants, this is the most important study you're ever going to do, okay, and so forth. And to me, that's a procedure thing that was not in there. You want to say exactly so someone can replicate it. Okay. You don't want to be adding secret sauce into your recipe. Okay. Like setting high expectations, for example, or other kinds of things that no one knows about. Okay. I once made lemon meringue pie, and this one of the secrets was that in the cream top, the elderly woman that taught me how to make it poured a little bit of the lemon meringue into the cream and whipped it up. you're going to have to add that. Okay. You have to put in exactly how you do things, exactly how you make it. So someone can make a pie and a study just like yours. I know I'm belaboring it a little bit, but oftentimes it doesn't have that level of detail or extraneous detail that we don't need to actually do the study. Okay. Data plans. Data plans, it's my bread and butter. Okay. People get stuck with data plans. You take stats classes, but there's not enough, I guess, figuring out how to match that data plan or create a data plan with those research questions. And frankly, we have, 60 or 80 lessons, but we really don't do that either in terms of teaching that. We say this test is good for that kind of analysis or for that kind of question, but some global overarching, like, hey, how do we create data plans from research questions? And maybe instead of a quant webinar, maybe I'm just going to do data plans, from research questions. So we will talk about that here in a moment. But I think that could be a whole webinar that and people again get stuck there, and it's really, really important to say, yes, I'm going to examine these questions with these participants and these instruments via this procedure, and this is what I'm going to do with the data when I get it. Right? All right. One other piece is sample size determination. They have a fancy word called power analysis, which means you have an 80% chance of finding differences or relationships if they're there to be found in the data. And the question people might be asking is, why is sample size after data plan? Why isn't sample size related to participants? Well, there's two types of sample sizes in the world. One sample size is based on the whole population. So during voting season, we pollsters can find out how the country is voting based on 3,500 people. It's amazing. They stratify their sampling and they can get, okay, and they can figure out how people are going to vote. That is not the sample size we're using here. Our sample size is based specifically on the data analysis plan analysis. So what that means is you have a t-test, paired t-test, okay? You have different effect sizes, but let it be enough to be said that for each test, there's a sample size associated with it. Okay. That's why it comes after the data plan. Okay. I'm going to keep moving here. Last piece is there is ethical considerations that should be mentioned. People want to know how you're going to keep the data, how long you're going to keep the data, where you're going to keep the data, how is it under lock and key. You can just probably, whatever, chat GPT it and get some basic ethical kind of template there, okay, about the kinds of things you should be thinking about to do your study and have your data in some ethical fashion. Quick word about confidentiality and anonymity. Can't be both. That's the first part. If I know your name, address, and so forth, it's not anonymous. And if it's anonymous and I can't tell who said it, I don't have to have confidentiality because I have no idea who you are. Okay. So just to know it's one or the other. And confidentiality is you can point to, someone and know their BMI or whatever. Okay. So, but that should be included in there. Okay. You should tell them in the consent form what you're doing. All right. Okay. Biggest problem people can figure out typically what the question is, how you're going to get the data. They don't know what analysis to use. And it's relatively straightforward. So the recipe for data analysis plan is research questions that has some language in there, okay? So I'll say statistical language, but it's normal English, okay? There's nothing crazy, right? Research questions in some language, and those variables have some level of measurement. and I'll talk about language, and I'll talk about levels. All right, so those are the two ingredients, and knowing that, you can come up with a data plan, and I'll show you some basic examples of that. So, typical language. The most common is variable A relates to B. Are there differences on A by B? Is there prediction? These relating differences, prediction, language, okay, really cover, 30 tests, okay? All the correlations, all the chi-squares, all the Fishers, all the regressions, okay? So it covers lots and lots of ground. Those three pieces of language, relates, differences, prediction, is not going to get you to some time series. But for a vast majority of people on this call and many faculty, okay, those three are going to get you through the night, okay? All right, so that's the language we need. Let's talk about levels. Levels of measurement. So everything has one of three types of level of measurement, broadly speaking. The first one is the coarsest way of looking at it, which is just nominal level of measurement. It's basically just group names of things: blue, red, green block, okay? No particular order, no particular size, okay? I'm not counting some spectrum of the color scheme, okay? But basically there's no order. Ordinal has names like that's a small Coca-Cola, that's a medium Coca-Cola. Okay, so it does have names and it has order. Okay, so hence the bar chart, which has kind of an ordered icon there. Okay, labels and order. Scale has it has names: 1 inch, 2 inch, 5 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inch, 6 inch. It also has order: 2 after 1, 3 after 2, and so forth. Okay, but it also has equal spacing or equal volume. Okay, so 1 inch to 2 inch has the same exact distance as 2 inch to 3 inch, has the same exact distance as 3 to 4, and so forth. All right, so it's at equal distances or equal volumes. Okay, that make it scale, and it has the icon of a ruler. Okay. Let me ask a question, kind of a trick question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So people very often have age groups, okay? And they have 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 or more. Is that ordinal or scale? So if you throw that into the webinar or the Q&A or into the webinar chat, I'd be interested in hearing your response. So again, you have these fixed 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 or more. Is your guess, and there's a lot of folks on this call, is your guess that it's nominal, ordinal, or scale? Okay, so I have ordinal, scale, ordinal, ordinal. Any more responses? Scale? Okay. Any other scale? Okay. All right, so I have 3 scales, 2 ordinal. Any more? Ordinal, 3, 3. All right. I think we have an equal number of scale and ordinal. So the correct answer is ordinal. You have equal intervals from 20 to 29. You have an equal interval from 30 to 39. You have an equal interval from 40 to 49. 50 or more can go 50, 55, 60, 65, 70. Since that is not an equal space, okay, so to speak, okay, you have to make it ordinal. It's certainly ranked ordered, okay? It definitely has an order, definitely has a name, but the fact that it has 50 or more puts it into the ordinal thing. Did I say ordinal? Melissa, did I say this correctly?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So yes, all of those levels have to have the same exact interval. Okay. All right. All righty. I want to say one other quick thing here. So just quickly, the many people use Likert type items. What's a Likert item? Well, I think the correct pronunciation is Likert, but everyone calls it Likert, so we're going to call it Likert, or continue the wrong way of doing it. Okay, of saying it. So when you have a Likert scale, okay, which is these kind of 5-point scales from strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree, could be 4-point, could be 5-point, could be 7-point. Is it an ordinal or scale level of measurement? And the truth is that they've done research on it, and at the individual level, like age that we just talked about, at the individual level, if you have if you have 3 or 4 levels, like disagree, disagree strongly, disagree, agree, strongly agree. If you have 3 or 4 on one item, okay, keep it as ordinal, okay? Even though, how do I know the exact distance or interval between strongly disagree and disagree to agree? Keep them ordinal. For a single item that has 5 or more, okay, like a 5-point Likert scale, you can use them as scale. It doesn't have any impact or minimal impact on your analyses. And Melissa will throw that in there into the statistic solutions. Is it ordinal or Likert? The other thing I want to mention is once you start adding things or averaging things, you are clearly in the scale world, okay? So when you took a test as a kid, you had a 10-point test and you got question 1, correct or incorrect. That's nominal, okay? Correct or incorrect are just labels. But once I add up and say correct is 1 point, incorrect is 0, once I add them or average them, I am clearly in the scale world, okay? Hey, you got 8 out of 10. That's a scale, or 80%, okay? So just to know, again, once you start adding or averaging, you're in scale world. Okay. Let's get into some of the different tests that can be discerned based on language and based on level of measurement. So if you have a nominal or ordinal variable and you want to relate two variables, you're in chi-square land, okay? And those nominal or ordinal can be 2 levels, 3 levels, 4. So you could have multiple levels, okay, of one variable and the other variable. But once you're in nominal, ordinal, chi-square, anything ordinal and scale combination, you're in Spearman correlation. Any kind of ordinal with another ordinal or scale, you're in Spearman correlation world, or scale, you're in Pearson world. And everyone's going to get a copy of this, so you don't have to memorize anything. Just know that that those are the analyses. And there's different assumptions with these tests too, by the way. And you should look at those tests. Chi-squares have 2 assumptions, and if they're not met, you're going to be doing a Fisher test. Pearson correlation has assumption. If that assumption of linearity isn't met, you're in Spearman correlation. So basically, when you're talking about relating one variable to another, and you have nominal, and you're using that language relating, okay, a relationship, and you have nominal and ordinal, those are the analyses that are the primary analyses. When you're looking at differences, we're really in t-test land, ANOVA land, MANOVA land. Okay, so if you have a scale variable, does my continuous emotional intelligence score differ by sex, male and female? I'm doing an independent sample t-test. When I have a scale by nominal with 3 or more levels, like, is there a difference in emotional intelligence by gender identification, male, female, non-binary? Okay, now once I have 3 or more levels, I'm doing ANOVAs. Scale by ordinal, same thing. Ordinal by nominal, you're in Mann-Whitney or Crisco-Wallace. These are repeated measures, okay, which is the same person, okay, individual. ordinal to ordinal, Wilcoxon, same person. Would be a group that, and some ordinal variable pre-post follow-up, okay? 3 or more times. So these are some of the tests looking at differences. Finally, it's just kind of regression world. And in regression world, the key is the outcome variable, also called the dependent variable, also called the criterion level variable. Okay, so okay, so does not matter about the predictors in terms of selecting the test. So nominal binary variable predicted by nominal ordinal scale. So when your outcome variable is nominal and binary, 2 levels, male, female, live, die, diagnosis, yes, no, whatever, okay? When it's binary, we're doing a binary logistic regression. So, so just know that that's the clue, binary outcome, binary regression. When that nominal variable has more than 2 levels, 3 or more levels, we're into multinomial, ordinal outcome variable, ordinal regression, and scale variable. Let's say the most common, okay, that people have some validated instrument that they have some scale number outcome. Okay, it's a linear regression. If you have more than one predictor, it's multiple linear regression, but linear regression or multiple is just fine. Okay. And Melissa, we probably need a course on it, a mini course on this, where they get to play and try these different things. Okay, so probably we pull from the other courses, but I think it'd be helpful to have people practice selecting the right test. Okay, all right. Let me just stop for a few minutes and see if there's questions to be had here. I know there were questions up top. I can't hear you. Okay, I hope you can hear me now. All right. Okay. Okay. Blah blah blah. Help me just do method and methodology, same darn thing. Doctor in public health, welcome. PhD student at psych, planning stage of my 3rd study of my dissertation. Oh, I hate these multi-stage. I mean, you're probably at a good school, frankly, where you're doing these multi-stage, multi-study things. Most people are not, okay? Anyway, you're in the soup now, Natalie. All right. Grad student draft stage of the dissertation methodology. You're in the right place, Catherine. Qualitative research. Good. We're going to get there in 2 seconds. Didn't give you the whole thing. What did you say? There's no lit or no instrument on a student's topic. So Cindy, so my quick comment was for doc students, if you're faculty, do whatever you want to do. For students, if you cannot find literature on your topic, or you cannot find an instrument on your topic, I'm going to say switch your topic. Okay, you haven't done any work. You haven't found anything anyway. Okay, so starting over is 10 minutes. So just switch your topic. Okay. All right. All right. Then we got the scale. Okay. Just want to know if I can get access to the slides. They're going to be coming. So recordings coming. Okay. All right. Let's move along. Melissa, we good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, cool. All right. All right. So qualitative methods. What's the overarching thing here? Still want a cookbook, still want it replicable, but the way we're analyzing data and the way we're collecting data and the whole flavor of the study is different. Qualitative is basically getting narrative from folks, people being interviewed, something of this sort, okay? When quantitative is typically a survey with getting responses, and it can be put into numerals. The a lot of folks have a quantitative survey, like I'm going to ask you some demographic information, I'm going to give you an emotional intelligence scale, and I'm going to ask you two open-ended questions. No problem. Call it quantitative with a few open-ended. That's fine. It's not a deep dive qualitative. So a true mixed method is I'm doing several interviews and I'm doing a survey. So that's true mixed method. But for the case that I just mentioned, with just a few open-ended, don't worry about it. Having said that, having said that, your advisor may have a different idea than me. So guess whose idea you want to follow? Right. They have, so if they want to call it something else, then you call it something else. Sorry. And ditto with the quantitative language. Sometimes we'll say, is there a relationship between A and B? Thinking correlations, but they're like, we want you to do regression. So it's not a direct one-to-one business here. People have their own experiences and their own worldviews, and they're going to share those experiences and worldviews via their directions to you. So just as a heads up, don't get frustrated, just follow along here. Follow them. Okay. So what's in this cookbook? Certainly there's research questions. Those research questions you have need to be directly related to the semi-structured interview questions, typical use case. They need to be directly related to those semi-structured interview questions. I cannot tell you how many times I have people's research questions and I have people's interviews and they've already conducted them, okay? And they don't match at all. You cannot respond to those research questions given that survey, given that interview, okay? By the way, it's passed through the committee, not one person, four people. And they're like, so I don't know what to say there, except they have to align, okay? You have to basically have questions that are going to answer that question. Someone was just working on, it was a religious study, and they were asking about gun violence, but none of the questions asked about gun violence. They were asked about the church supporting this and that. So they have to be aligned, okay? So absolutely 100% make sure that your research questions and your interview questions make sense together. They have to, okay? Okay. Participants, obviously, they should have some, you know, some context and experience in that topic. This gal was asking about Black congregants where there was gun violence. Well, you should be, and you should be, you should not have any atheists in your group. Okay, she was asking about congregants in some church, so you have to have experience in that. All righty. The instruments and procedure, typically these kind of go together. Again, if your advisor or your department wants these things separated, no problem. But basically, you have a semi-structured interview. By the way, that is often created by the interviewer. Contrary to the quant, where I'm like hammering home, get a, get a reliable, validated instrument. Here, I'm saying the opposite. Often you can just create and ask questions and follow-up questions related to the topic you want to learn about. So it's going to be, I'm going to administer and interview this person around these interview questions. Definitely be quant or qual. That's got to be in your appendix, by the way. So you can't bake a cake and be like, not have the ingredients. So you have to share that. Maybe just if you have long surveys, give a couple of questions, but quali so for the quantitative case, if you have a long survey, you shouldn't put that into the method. Put that in the appendix and give some examples, questions, okay? For qualitative, again, you don't need the whole interview in your methodology. Put it in your appendix and reference that. Data analysis plan. Melissa, we probably should send a link, and hopefully we have it. We should probably send a link of what we advise people put into their methodology about using Intellectus Qualitative. Hopefully that's linkable. So, but basically you want to tell folks how are you going to excerpt, how are you going to create codes, how are you going to create themes. Okay, that should be happening. When you're using AI-driven tools, okay, you should talk about what is your interaction with the tool to discern and to get those excerpts and to get those codes and themes. So that data plan, be it AI tools, which I highly recommend, and or hand coding, which I suggest you just validate what's going on here with the AI. You need to talk about that. Sample size, the idea is saturation. Okay, what does that mean? I interview 10 people. If I interview another 5 people or 105 people, I'm not going to get any new themes. I'm not going to get any new information out. So that's what saturation essentially means. Ethical considerations, just same with quant, but particularly people giving their life story to you, okay? They may not want the world to know who they are. So it really should be either confidential or anonymous, okay? And then if people want to know how long you store the data for. Back in the day, it used to be like 7 years to store your data. Why would they want to hold your data for 7 years? Well, they want to make sure that they can replicate your study even with your own data. So I don't know about the exact rules, but the reason you save the data is other researchers, and should be willing to share your quantitative or qualitative data anonymized, okay? So people find a similar thing, okay, or not. So, but ethical considerations seem to have an underline there when it comes to qualitative. Practical considerations. When you're talking about your data analysis, not about your excerpts, codes, and themes per se, but in terms of you, particularly using AI tools, and Melissa maybe just put in the quant and qual AI tools, statistics and qualitative, that that there's different ways of putting that data in. So if typically is I have 10 interviewees, I put in 10 interviews, okay? But you can put it in by domain or research question. For example, if I wanted to know about a school, okay, some school climate, okay, but teachers may well have a different view, okay, than administrators. They may have a different view than parents. So you may want to, in these cases, I would say you do 3 separate studies, okay? Teachers, admins, parents, and then you have kind of a cool results chapter, which is, hey, here's theme 1. And gosh, teachers and admins had the same themes. Here's one that only parents had, okay, and so forth. So you can easily compare and contrast those different kinds of folks or interviewees. Considerations, quality is more important than the number of themes. By the way, people ask, how many themes should I have? Enough that you can wrap your brain around. To me, and not the sharpest tack in the box, okay? But I want to have a number of themes I can keep in my brain. I don't want 25 themes. I don't want 50 themes. I want something that can manage and someone can actually learn something, okay? So I think manageable number. You should see what the tools give you first. people come in like, I only want 6 themes. Well, let's hold off for a second. Let's just see what comes out. See how many excerpts are there, see how many codes are there, see how many themes the tools give you, and then kind of come to some decisions. But I would not be shooting for 20. I would not be shooting for 2. Okay. All right. Other questions that you have at the moment or questions that you have? Okay.
And if you prefer, you can raise your hand and we'll just unmute you too.
Yep. So I'll just say this real quick. I'll just say quickly, I'll do the shameless plug of for the quant. We do have let's see if I can get here. So we do have data plans for different tests here. It's like $59 for the month at 7-day free trial. Okay. So, but know that you have data plans sitting here. Okay. For different tests. Know that you have that power analysis based on the test that you're selecting. So, back in my day, this thing took a week to figure out. And G power is kind of tough and passes challenging. Here, you can kind of say medium effect size, probably solid with that for the most part. And you can, in 2 seconds, get the desired sample size for the test. Okay. All right. For the qual, we probably need, well, maybe some templates. Let me go back for a second. So for the quant, and it does analyses too. Okay. So I have to select project. So just know, I don't know if I have any analyses here, but just know that you can do different tests. It writes it up, makes APA tables. The qualitative, just to know. Um, I'm not quite sure exactly what I have here. I have no codes, but you can upload things. You can use AI to get the codes, to get the themes. It does excerpting at the same time. Lit review. Again, it's out of scope of the talk, but just so you know what tools are out there in the world that there's a lit review tool that can really you upload your PDFs and they'll group them for you, okay, and then actually generate a synthesis of it, and then you can edit that draft, okay. So just to know that there's quant tools, qual tools, lit review tools. I'm still fighting for a methodology tool. Um, so tools are out there. All right. Please explain the qualitative aspect for the programming. I don't think I'm going to get into that at the moment. I think if you have data, I'll do a free 15-minute consult with you, which maybe brings me to this. And let me see here. So from current slide, um, let me just get this here. Because I think the programming gets nuanced, Catherine, which is, do we put it all in or we separate it out by parent, teacher, admin? So I think the programming starts with how that data is curated, so it's a longer conversation. What's the best way to describe it? Say use only descriptive. Thanks. That's right. I had 2 other questions. So one was descriptive studies can be quant or qual. If it's narrative, like I'm doing a descriptive, I'll say phenomenological study about lived experiences of parents and thinking about safety at school, you're in qual world. If I'm doing a descriptive study like, hey, what is the average score of emotional intelligence for males or for females? So numbers, quantitative, narrative, qualitative is the kind of the distinction there. G. Lisa asked the question about, that's a pretty name, by the way. G. Lisa asked the question about my writing is too academic, or it doesn't sound like me. Honestly, it shouldn't sound like you. We don't write like that. If I write a letter to a friend, that's different than some scholarly writing. So you might well just be on the right track. The fact that it's too academic, and I guess I'll say something about the writing. People have lots of different writing styles in the world, and your faculty committee have a lot of different writing styles. And I would say look at the writing styles of other dissertations or scholarly projects that they've approved. Okay. And look at that style. Okay. That's the style you want to replicate because you know that it's been approved. Um, but it's, yeah, I mean, um, working with a gal that got their study kickback, many times, probably because of the writing style. Um, Not because the content's not there, but it's probably not organized well, and the writing style. So, you want to find the writing styles that have been approved and take it from there. Um, Lit review tool. Okay, right. So Melissa's put that in there. Welcome to you, Lisa. So quick, so you can QR code if you want a quick 15-minute consult with me. Samantha can help any and all students get organized with me or triage questions. Ashley for faculty support, which means trials, means demos. We also have courseware for each of these tools. Melissa for any and all questions above those. Our phone number, is that the right phone number there? 888, yep. Okay. And then our new website. Our new website has all of the tools in one place. So all righty. I think with that, we will wrap it for a day. I am looking to do new webinars in 2026. So we're just starting to wrap our brains around that. So if you have ideas about webinars you'd like to see, feel free to weigh in. Happy to hear that. And otherwise, stay tuned for the video of this, video recording of this, and for other webinars coming out this year. And of course, share this with other folks. Okay. People don't know these webinars are out there. There's free things to be had, online resources like this. So please share it with faculty and colleagues. And with that, I'll say thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe and have a great weekend.